Supriya Srinath, you might have just heard the IMF Deputy Director emphasizing what the Director General said last week, that India is a bright spot on the horizon. And yet the opposition is continuously claiming that the Indian economy is in serious trouble. Make sense of that for us.
So thank you very much for having me on the show. A good evening to the fellow panelists and of course to all your viewers. I think the IMF Deputy Director was being polite with you, like they usually are. Because the proof of the pudding is in eating. And the proof of the pudding is that IMF has cut India's GDP growth forecast by not 1 or 2, but actually 60 basis points, 0.6%. And not once, but twice over. IMF is not the only one. World Bank has done it 4 times, the RBI has done it 3 times, Moody's, Fitch, UNCTAD, one after the other, ADB, every brokerage, every agency has reduced India's growth estimates. And to me, that is a huge cause of concern. This is not a matter of politicking. It's a huge cause of concern because low growth means lesser jobs, fewer jobs, less income and more poverty. And given the income accentuation in this country, which the IMF has talked about, while reducing India's growth estimate, we have serious reasons to worry. The rupee, and because you alluded to a question that you put forward to the IMF Deputy Director, and I will take just 10 seconds to talk about this. The rupee which Mr. Modi inherited at 58 to a dollar is today staring at 83, and many believe it could go down to 90 by the end of this year, and maybe 100 if adequate policy measures are not taken. The finance minister says it's the rupee that is not weakening, but the dollar that is strengthening. I don't know what logic that is. She is best placed to address and explain that. But I will only ask one question. You have put $100 billion worth of our forex reserves in the last 10 months to strengthen the rupee. Why do you think you have failed to do that? Because people have no faith in your policy. And until you do policy correction, nothing is going to improve.
But
you are happy and sanguine to say that we are improving against other currencies.
Exactly. Two clarifications. No, ma'am, just a minute. From what the Deputy Director said, she was saying, when they said bright spot, it's relative to other emerging markets that are also suffering from inflation, from a slowdown, and even in the context of the falling rupee, I think what the finance minister was suggesting is, please look at it as a dollar index, compare the Indian rupee to other currencies, not just to the dollar.
I am so glad you have raised that point because people need to know the truth behind those statements. Let me correct you there. Who are we going to compare ourselves to? As an economy, am I going to compare myself to a US, China, UK? Or am I going to compare myself to Bangladesh and Sri Lanka and be happy with it? That's the first clarification that's important, because if we are going to compare ourselves to China and US, it is important to point out the truth. We are a $3 trillion economy. We are expected to grow at 6.8%, and I can bet my bottom dollar on it, that will also be revised lower. A $3 trillion economy growing at 6.8%. China is an $18 trillion economy, expected to grow at 4.4%, and US, a $21 trillion GDP, expected to grow at over 1%. So what are we talking about, and exactly what are we comparing? We can't compare apples to oranges. To the one important point that you made, our ascent as far as other currency baskets is concerned. Extremely fallacious, extremely foolhardy, and I will tell you why. 86% of India's global trade is dollar denominated. So until you do not strengthen against the dollar, everything else is a flawed argument made to mask your policy failures.
Zafar Islam, now respond. You've heard what Supriya Srinath has said, that while we take satisfaction in the IMF saying that, we are a bright spot amidst the dark horizon, there are concerns, there are global headwinds out there. The finance minister goes to Washington and says, don't worry about, it's not about the falling rupee, it's about the strengthening dollar. Tell that to those who are importing money. Tell that to those who are trying to send their children abroad. Tell that to those who are worried that this will eventually slow down India's growth rate going ahead. Should there not be a little bit more concern over what's happening, rather than this, don't worry, be happy, we are better off than the rest of the world?
No, Rajdeep, let me respond to that. First of all, let us understand how the world perceives our economy and how the responsible opposition perceives about Indian economy. They have given thumbs up for all the structural reforms being undertaken by the Honorable Prime Minister, all the policy reforms being initiated by the Honorable Prime Minister. They have given thumbs up. They have also acknowledged that all the initiatives taken during COVID, the most difficult time, has been very good for the Indian economy because everything has worked for India. Because there are certain inherent strength which is being exploited by the Honorable Prime Minister, which the opposition bench does not even want to acknowledge that. Let me tell you a few things. When people are talking about revising the GDP number, of course, India is exporting. Don't we know that how we have achieved the target of 419 billion last year? And there is a global headwind. Obviously, that partly export whatever projection we had, which will suffer, and that will eventually, because part of the GDP is based on the export we do, export numbers. So obviously, it will impact the GDP number, and it will be revised. But it has to be seen not in isolation, but it is an integrated economy. The global economy also has to be seen that whether other emerging economies are impacted because of this slowdown, global slowdown, because of the Ukraine war, whether there is another economy which has also been slowing down or not.
Should there be less complacency? I think the point that many are making, objective observers, forget political parties, even objective economists are now saying, we need to be a little bit more concerned, a little bit more belt tightening, instead of constantly saying, we are doing much better than the rest of the world at the moment, and therefore we will be insulated. That seems to be a line that could get us down the line into a bit of trouble. We need to get our act together.
Actually, Rajdeep, you should do a back testing. From 2020 till now, how the other countries have taken decision, how Indian government has taken decision to counter the Ukraine crisis as well as Corona. We have initiated Atmanirbhar packages, non-Atmanirbhar packages. We would never unnecessarily supplied money and given money to everyone because it would have created inflation. Today we are in a much better spot than any other country. See how the Western world is struggling, how US is struggling, how UK is struggling, but India, everybody is talking nice thing about India because the policy decision taken by the Honorable Prime Minister. Second thing, which is very important, we are not, if you say that we are not concerned, that government is concerned because, as I said, it's an integrated economy. And we are not thinking in isolation. When the world is suffering, India will also be impacted. But you have to counter with the policy measure which is being done by the Honorable Prime Minister.
Okay, I take your point. I take your point.
Last 10 seconds.
Yes.
Last second. When you're talking about rupee depreciating against dollar only. See, 5 years ago, again I'm requesting you do a back testing. Euro dollar today is 0.98. What it was, it used to be 1.4. Today, all the other currencies, you see the dollar versus GBP. Again, it is dollar which has strengthened. If India has strengthened against all the other currencies, including euro, including GBP, including major other currencies, except US currencies, because dollar is appreciating against all the other countries,
you made that point, Mr. Zafar Islam, you made that point earlier as well, but Supriya Srinath respond therefore. There is the fact that there is an element of macroeconomic stability at the moment in the country. The big numbers are better off, whether it's on inflation, particularly on inflation, growth rates compared to other countries that were similar position post-COVID, post-Ukraine. Are we going to give credit to the government for that at all? Or are we simply going to say we're going to oppose everything this government does?
Rajdeep, you know better than that and you can do better than that. Give me one macroeconomic parameter where the fundamentals are strong. Our growth is faltering. We are going to end this year yet again at under 6%. Our inflation is high, and please do not be misled by what the BJP tells you. The Indian Parliament has mandated inflation between 2 to 6%. We are successively, quarter after quarter, month after month, breaching it beyond 7%. What is the real rate of growth? That is what growth minus inflation is. You see the figures, it will tell you a story, which is why inflation is hurting the common man a lot more. Which other figure is good? Please tell me. CAD, we are staring at levels of 3.4%. Do they even realize what that means? I'm not even touching fiscal deficit right now. I'm not even touching the currency. And so much for currency, you know, we would have benefited had our exports been strong. July, August, September, our exports have actually shrunk and our imports have gone up so much that our trade deficit in the last few months has doubled over the same period on a year-on-year basis.
Okay,
I also want to point out one very important thing here.
Yes.
One very important, last thing, Rajdeep. You know, when you are in government, you don't put up your hands and say external factors, what do we do? झुंझुना बजाने के लिए तो आप नहीं आए ना सरकार में. 2013 when the taper tantrum happened, rupee fell from 58 to 69 to $1. Within 4 months, we brought it back to 58 and we gave them the currency at 58.40. Within 4 months, $12 billion worth of foreign investor money had fled the country. We got $35 billion back. Within 1 year, from 5% growth rate, we took it to over 7%. Can they claim to do any of this?
Okay,
and please remember, this economy was on
I have some more news to give our viewers.
Before the Russia-UK war.
I must give Zafar a final word. Zafar, a final word, please.
Rajdeep, I think Congress spokesperson should revisit 2008.
Without saying 4 times honorable, don't waste everybody's time. 4 times honorable.
Please shut up.
Interrupt you, ma'am.
I didn't interrupt you. So she should revisit 2008.
You better mind your tongue, Zafar, because I'm not going to let you speak. Don't you dare say shut up to me.
No, ma'am, that's unfair. Ma'am, you are being unfair. I have to... he did not intervene with you. Ma'am, please keep Supriya's mic down. Go ahead, Zafar Islam.
He has the...
Go ahead, Zafar Islam, please go ahead.
You should also learn some decency.
Keep your arrogance.
Not interrupting. I'm not interrupting you, so you should not interrupt.
Zafar, this is not fair. Supriya Shineth, this is not fair at all. Supriya Shineth, I will have to drown your mic because it's not fair to the viewer. Let Zafar Islam complete.
Rajdeep, the differentiating factor in the past, when we had FPI money, and that's why CAD was always under threat. Today we have more FDI. We have a $5.5 billion, $550 billion FDI in last 8 years, compared to what FPI of $50 billion. So that is that time $50 billion against $65 billion of FDI. So that is the debt. Please keep your mouth shut. I didn't interrupt you.
No need to say keep your mouth shut and all, sir. That's also not true.
But
I'm giving you 30 seconds uninterrupted time. Please go ahead.
So that is the differentiating factor. Secondly, that she was talking about mandate by the parliament for maintaining inflation between 2 to 6%. She should also revisit what happened after 2008 economic crisis. Inflation is double digit, weighted average, the 8.6%. For the tenor of UPA. Today you can see that weighted average is only less than 5%. That only suggests that all the policy decision which has been taken is actually paying off. And all the high frequency data, you have to see the high frequency. Also, you have to
I am afraid we are reaching the stage where our viewers are not getting the benefit of 2 very fine spokespersons not allowing the other to speak. And when that happens, the viewer loses out. I think you've made both your central points. We can go back to some of them and we will continue to focus on them because we believe in the next 18 months the economy is the biggest challenge. For all the noise taking place around us, that's where the real debate must take place in this country. I appreciate my 2 guests joining us and I apologize to our viewers that at the end it got so fractious.